For over 2 decades, Graham Norton has been the king of British talk shows. A man whose wit could melt tension and whose laughter could rescue even the most disastrous moments on live television. His red sofa has hosted everyone from Hollywood royalty to music legends, and his charm has made awkward silences vanish like magic. But even for someone as effortlessly composed as Norton, not every guest has been A-light. Some moments left scars that time never erased. Now at 62, Graham Norton finally admits that beneath the laughter, there were interviews that test his patience, his humor, and even his professionalism, that he doesn't name them out of bitterness, but out of truth. Because behind the world's most beloved talk show, there were nights he couldn't wait to end, nights when charm wasn't enough to save the conversation. And the names on that list, they include some of Hollywood's most powerful and unpredictable stars. Mark Wahlberg, the night chaos took the couch. It was 2013 and the Graham Norton Show was at its absolute peak. A global hit watched by millions every weekend. That night promised another easy victory for Norton. The guest list was perfect. Michael Fassbender, known for his sharp humor and professionalism. Sarah Silverman, always quick-witted and ready to push boundaries. And Mark Wahlberg, the Hollywood A-lister with a reputation for being funny, bold, and larger than life. But what no one, not even Graham Norton, expected was that Wahlberg would turn the entire show into a masterclass in live television chaos. From the moment Wahlberg walked onto their stage, something felt different. His swagger was louder, his speech slightly slurred, his jokes a bit too forceful. At first, it was amusing. The audience laughed, thinking he was just in high spirits. But as the minutes passed, the energy shifted from entertaining to uneasy. Wahlberg wasn't just relaxed, he was intoxicated. His timing was off. His jokes landed sideways, and he began interrupting everyone, including Norton himself. Each time Fassbender tried to speak, Wahlberg cut in with a random comment. When Sarah Silverman told a theory, he leaned across her, shouting over her punchlines. What began as playful soon turned into discomfort. You could feel the tension. One audience member later recalled, people didn't know whether to laugh or look away. Then came the moment no one could forget. Without warning, Wahlberg stood up, stumbled slightly, and climbed right onto Graham Norton's lap. He wrapped an arm around the host's shoulders, slurred something unintelligible, and laughed as if they were old drinking buddies in a pub. The crowd erupted in nervous laughter. Norton, to his credit, handled it like a pro, keeping his composure, smiling, and gently trying to steer the conversation back on track. But his eyes betrayed the strain. After the episode aired, social media exploded. Viewers called it the most chaotic talk show moment ever broadcast. Some thought it was hilarious. Others said it was hard to watch. Norton himself later admitted the night left him exhausted. He was just out of it, completely gone. Wahlberg later joked about it, insisting he'd simply had a few drinks before going on. But for Norton, that night was no joke. It was a reminder that even the most charming host can't control every storm. Sometimes the show must go on, even when it's falling apart right before your eyes. Robert De Niro. The interview that went nowhere. If Mark Wahlberg was chaos, Robert De Niro's silence. When the Oscar-winning actor appeared on the Graham Norton Show, the world expected a rare glimpse into the mind of a legend. What they got instead was one of the most difficult interviews Norton ever conducted. De Niro's reputation for being reserved was already well known, but no one expected it to be this intense. From the moment he sat down, he looked uneasy, polite, but distant. His answers were short, cautious, and deliberate, often no longer than a few words. Norton tried everything: humor, gentle teasing, and even flattery. Nothing worked. At one point, after yet another minimal response, Norton sighed, smiled, and said what everyone was thinking. "This is hard work, Robert." The audience laughed nervously. De Niro gave a faint grin, and that was it. For the rest of the segment, Norton carried the weight off conversation alone, doing his best to keep the mood light. But behind his calm expression, he later admitted it was exhausting. Unlike drunk or arrogant guests, De Niro wasn't difficult by attitude. He was difficult by nature. He wasn't trying to be rude. He was simply uncomfortable in such a loose, comedic environment. The contrast between Norton's vibrant energy and Niro's quiet restraint made the interview feel like a chess match. One player attacking with humor, the other defending with silence. Even so, the moment became unforgettable. Viewers saw not a clash of egos, but a clash of worlds. The talk show host who thrived on connection and the actor who built his career on mystery. Norton later reflected, "Some guests just don't like to talk, and that's fine. But when it's live television, you have to make silence look entertaining." The Niro episode became a lesson in patience, proof that not every star can be charmed, and not every legend enjoys being unmasked. Harvey Weinstein, the shadow before the scandal. Long before his name became synonymous with disgrace, Harvey Weinstein appeared in The Graham Norton Show. And even then, something about the atmosphere felt wrong. It was years before the world would learn the full truth about the disgraced producer. But for Graham Norton, that night left a mark he would never forget. Weinstein arrived not as aguist, but as a force, loud, controlling, and utterly convinced of his own importance. From the start, he dominated the couch. He interrupted other guests, cut off Norton mid-sentence, and redirected nearly every question back to himself. The show's trademark warmth evaporated as Weinstein's arrogance filled the room. The more Norton tried to steer the conversation toward humor or light-hearted stories, the more Weinstein pushed back, boasting about his success and his influence in Hollywood. For once, Norton, usually inflappable, was visibly uncomfortable. His polite smile thinned as the interview dragged on, and even the audience sensed something was off. The laughter came less easily, replaced by nervous chuckles as the tension grew heavier. It wasn't a meltdown or a scandal on live TV, but it was worse in a way. It was a slow, suffocating dominance that turned the show's natural rhythm into something unrecognizable years later. After Weinstein's fall and the avalanche of allegations that ended his career, Norton spoke about that interview with a chilling sense of hindsight. "I had no idea at the time," he said quietly. "But looking back, it'll make sense." He didn't elaborate much, but the meaning was clear. That episode, which once just felt awkward, had become something darker in memory, a glimpse of the arrogance and cruelty that the world would later see in full. The footage still exists online, but few people revisit it now. For fans, it's uncomfortable to watch. For Graham Norton, it's a reminder that sometimes evil doesn't announce itself. It just walks onto your stage, smiles for the cameras, and tries to control the room. Mickey Rourke. The night silence took over. If Harvey Weinstein was overpowering, Mickey Rourke was the opposite. Silent, detached, and almost ghost-like. When their actor appeared on The Graham Norton Show, fans expected a mix of Hollywood charisma and eccentric charm. Instead, they got one of the quietest, most painfully awkward interviews in the show's history. From the moment he sat in the red sofa, it was obvious Rourke didn't want to be there. His shoulders slouched, his eyes distant, and his responses, when they came, were short, cryptic, or nonsensical. Graham Norton, known for his ability to make even shy guests open up, threw him every lifeline he could. He asked about films, about boxing, about anything that might spark life into the conversation. Nothing worked. At one point, Norton cracked a playful joke about Rourke's famous comeback after the wrestler. The audience laughed, but Rourke didn't. He simply nodded and looked away. The silence that followed was unbearable. Norton smiled, kept talking, and tried to fill the void, but every second felt heavier than the last. It was like talking to a wall, one producer later recalled. Even Graham couldn't save it. When the episode aired, fans noticed how drained Norton looked by the end. He later admitted it was one of the hardest interviews of his career. He just didn't want to be there. Norton said, "You can't fake energy. You can only try to survive the silence." It wasn't anger or disrespect that made the night difficult. It was the absence of connection. Rourke wasn't cruel or rude. He was simply elsewhere, lost in thoughts the show could never reach. That night proved that not all disasters come from arguments or chaos. Some come from emptiness. For a host whose gift is conversation, nothing is more painful than realizing the other person has nothing to give. Kevin Costner. When charisma turned to stone, there was nothing scandalous about Kevin Costner's visit to The Graham Norton Show. No drunken stumbles, No sharp exchanges, no walkouts. But for Graham Norton, it was one of the longest 30 minutes of his career. The problem wasn't attitude or ego. It was tone. Costner, the Hollywood icon known for his gravitas and stoic screen presence, walked onto the stage as if stepping into a press conference, not a party. Norton's talk show thrives on chaos, on laughter, overlapping stories, and moments that feel completely unrehearsed. Costner, however, answered every question with calm precision, often with the same expression he might wear in Dances with Wolves. The warmth that usually defines Norton's couch never materialized. The host tried everything, teasing jokes about Bodyguard, playful comments about his legendary roles, even nudging him to join in when other guests laughed. Costner smiled politely, but rarely followed along. Some people just don't get what this show is, Norton once said, referring to that night. It's meant to be silly. It's not a press junket. Pressed. The difference in rhythm was stark. When Norton cracked a